This is the last episode of season 1. This is episode 12, so it's the bonus episode. Detectives Andrew Houghton and Matt Vartanian, from the Elgin Police Department Cold Case Unit make an announcement for season 2, of course, which 2 episodes have already been released. And so we want to play this particular episode for you so that you'll be able to listen to it if you haven't yet. So again, this is the bonus episode, season 1, episode 12, a reflection of all the work that went into it. And of course, what's going to be coming in the future, as we're already seeing with season 2, episode 1 and episode 2. So this is Somebody Knows Something, season 1, episode 12. This is the bonus episode.
This podcast is based on information sourced primarily from police and media reports, but certain names and other identifying details may have been changed or altered for privacy and security reasons. While the events and cases discussed are based on real investigations, some aspects may be simplified for time and for narrative purposes. Voice actors have been used to read from statements or documents. All information presented is intended solely to inform and raise awareness. Hosts may discuss theories regarding the cases examined in this podcast, but such discussions are not intended to and should not be considered by the listener to be legal conclusions. All persons discussed are considered innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Listener discretion is advised.
This is Chief Anna Lally. Welcome to Somebody Knows Something, a podcast from the Elgin Police Department's Cold Case Unit. In this podcast, we will shed new light on cold cases in the city of Elgin by sharing untold details and by encouraging anyone with information to come forward. You will come along with real cold case detectives as they investigate active cold cases in real time and seek justice for the victims and closure for their families. We believe that the Elgin Police Department and our community can work together to bring closure to cold cases because we know that in these cases, somebody knows something.
Hello, and welcome to Somebody Knows Something, the Elgin Police Department Cold Case Podcast. My name is Detective Andrew Houghton.
And I'm Detective Matt Vartanian. This past season, we took our listeners along with us as we investigated the 1983 disappearance of 23-year-old Karen Sheepers. We spent 11 episodes on Karen's case, and our season culminated with Karen finally coming home. As we prepared for season 2, we thought long and hard about what case or cases we wanted to look at next. Then, something really big changed. I got promoted to sergeant. That means that I will be leaving the unit this summer. Working in this new unit with Andrew, particularly on Karen's case, has been a highlight of my career in law enforcement. Karen's case was an unbelievable story and experience, and I want to thank Karen's family, Chief Anna Lally, Andrew, and our entire team here at the Elgin Police Department who helped out with Karen's case. I think that as the cold case unit moves forward, it will continue to be successful as we here at the Elgin Police Department continue to seek justice for victims and their families on these cases.
Thanks, Matt. For me, too, it's been a true pleasure to work with you over the past year. And who knows, maybe we'll have the opportunity to work together again as the unit continues to develop and grow. Well, with Matt's departure, we now have a new member of the cold case unit and a new co-host for this podcast. So I'm pleased to introduce my new partner in the unit, and for season 2, Detective Chris Hall.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Chris.
It's a true honor to be here with you guys, and I'm really looking forward to the challenges that come with the cold case work. These cases really do make a difference, and I am looking forward to the new challenges that lay ahead.
Chris, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your background since you're new to the podcast?
Of course. My name is Christopher Hall. I graduated from Marquette University with a degree in criminology and law studies. I've been a police officer here in Elgin for over 9 years. In my time here at the Elgin Police Department, I've worked primarily in the patrol division's afternoon and night shift units. I am also a former member of the Elgin SWAT team and emergency services detail. I was given the privilege to become a detective in the Major Investigations Division a little over a year ago. Conducting investigations was something I always wanted to do in my career, especially investigations involving violent crimes like homicides. When an opening came up in the cold case unit, I was thrilled to make the transition over. It is a true privilege to be here, and I take enormous pride in working on these cases. The victims and their families deserve a new look into their case with the newest technological advances in investigations and a fresh perspective into all the events that have transpired up to this point.
Thanks for sharing, Chris. I'm sure you will continue pushing our unit forward and do a great job in the cold case unit. I'm hoping at some point to be able to make it back to the unit. But at least for now, I know that I'm leaving the unit in good hands. I wish you both the best on your cases and on season 2.
Thanks, Matt. We'll miss you.
Thank you, Sergeant Vartanian.
For this bonus episode, we want to highlight the changes in the unit and talk about what we're going to be covering in season 2 of Somebody Knows Something. But first, we felt like it would be appropriate to have Chief Anna Lally appear with us to get her reflections on Karen's case from season 1 and to hear her thoughts about the podcast and the future of the cold case unit. So welcome, Chief Lally. We're happy to have you with us.
Hi, guys. Thank you for having me. Yeah, so first, I just want to say thank you to the Elgin community for being an active participant in season 1, and obviously, the great result that we did have. I also want to thank WRMN for the work that they do, and welcome, Chris, you into this crazy thing that you're about to go into.
Chief, I think the first thing we wanted to ask you about was just kind of your reflections on season 1 with Karen's case. I know we heard from her family, we heard from her friends and coworkers, but what were some of your reflections from the day that we found her and finally located her vehicle that week?
Having 2 really great detectives, Matt and you, Andrew, and you guys really, taking something that a lot of departments wouldn't do and really changing the narrative of what police work looks like, in 2025. And so, that day when we did eventually find her vehicle and the week after that and the weeks that led up to, even the weeks leading up to when we were out there, I think it really was something that you could see the synergy of what we were trying to do. And, it's this concept of a cold case unit, and then how does that actually work? And then, it's really putting the right people in the right place. It's having the innovation to think something that's very different and to believe in it and to be optimistic to think that it's going to work. And then it's supporting the people in those positions. And, you guys absolutely did the work. I'm in the background making sure that you're getting what you need with resources and pushing out the community, information and talking about it. But I think that day you saw everybody kind of come together and truly understand what most people who become police officers, this is what you become a police officer for. And really, truly, when you spend your time on things that matter. So, I tell a lot of young officers, when they get into this profession, those little irritations that might happen each day, you're never going to remember that. You're going to remember it that day, maybe that week. But what you're going to remember is when you truly change someone's life for the better. And you did it because you could. And you did it because you had the opportunity that a lot of people don't get. So seeing that and seeing everyone being invested, and you could feel it in the department. You could feel the energy. It was very different, right? It's, the Elgin Police Department, absolutely great men and women that work there. And, police work, there's, it ebbs, it flows. You ride the wave sometimes. You realize, it's going to be a little rough, and then it gets a little bit better. But definitely, you could feel it, and you can still feel that energy. I mean, you feel it, as we're about to launch, season 2, and people are excited for it. And again, I think in all of that, whether it was the public accolades that people, received, and I know I joke with you and Matt and say you guys need publicists now, and you guys are superstars, and Chris is about to walk into that right now, but I think all of that did not matter. What really truly matters is that we were able to do something for the Sheepers family. And that is such a great gift that they gave us. And so, I was just truly, very proud of the police department, very proud of you and Matt, very proud of just the work, and the humane side of policing. And I think that people really, through the podcast, they saw, and I heard a lot of people comment about just how you guys were in the podcast and how you were very, different than what people expected police officers to be, and that you connected with the family. And it was genuine. People will feel if you're disgenuine. And I think that the way you guys approached it, had nothing to do with your training, your experience, your knowledge. That was just you as Andrew and Matt, as two humans. And I think that truly, there is no doubt that had something to do with the success of of what happened, and being able to find Karen and give her family a sense of peace.
Yeah, I don't think if we had not involved the family the way we did, I don't think we would have had the outcome we did. Like, you get a lot more buy-in because they were so open to doing it, and we had a good relationship with them throughout the process. So.
Absolutely. And we were, for the first case, I think the expectation is, because here's the other side of it, right? The expectation has been set. If we launch this podcast and, we didn't find Karen in this case, season 1, it comes and it goes. It still is a great thing, right? Because it's generating leads and you're trying to do something and you guys would continue that work. But I think the expectation for me, it was very simple that, I'm truly just an very optimistic person, and never once it was you guys weren't going to figure it. It was always, you're going to solve it. You're going to do it. I mean, it was just that confidence in you guys that, I think when you put that kind of, energy into the universe, this is what happens. If you're sitting there thinking from day one, oh my God, we have these hurdles and how are we going to do this? And what if this, that absolutely will, impact your view. And so I think, just having that, you guys got it, you're going to do it, you're going to solve it. It's a high expectation, but I think you guys, whether that's a motivation for you or it was just something that, I'm in your corner supporting you guys and saying, you are the right people in the room. You're smart, your personalities. And then you get the community on board, and then you get people involved, and you get the department involved, and people kind of see how this evolves. And I think, it's truly, I've said it, it's once in a lifetime that will happen in a career. Mm-hmm. However, as we launch, season 2, maybe it's not once in a lifetime, right? Like, this is where you have to kind of, here's the optimism. It could be maybe, 5 times in a lifetime, right? We'll see.
Hopefully so.
Yes.
Hopefully. Chief, Matt and Andrew briefly touched on this in season 1, but what do you see as the value of having a full-time cold case unit here in Elgin?
Yeah, so, I've talked about the cold case unit and wanting to start a unit for quite some time. And I've been in the police department. I'm in my 30th year. And, at one point I was a sergeant in our major investigations division. And I love the reason why I became a police officer was to truly do something to change the world. And people think, well, that's so cheesy. Do people really believe that? Yes, I believe it every single day, no matter what is happening. But I love the investigative side of things. And so I loved being, in the detective division. And, but I would see these case files and they're just sitting there, and families and people and what happened and all these questions. And I always, it's like, we need to do something with that. So eventually, right, when, you become the chief, now you can do it, right? Now it's a matter of, talking to the right people and, getting, I truly appreciate, my city manager, Rick Kozel, and his support. He never tells me no for the most part, right? And that's how things happen, right? Being able to allocate resources, people, time, money. And so, the value is the ability to give the community what they absolutely deserve from a progressive professional police department, which is peace, a sense of justice, a sense of, the department didn't forget about me. I've said before too, the victims are the unforgotten people in the criminal justice system. And we are the victims' advocates, and we are the families' advocates. And so having this full-time cold case unit and allocating time and dedicating resources, and spending time on the things that matter, right? This matters, the ability to, solve a case that sat for 40 years and to have those conversations with the family, you truly change lives. And so for me, it's on to the next evolution. This case is solved. You guys kind of took a little bit of a break, right? It's because I think you guys were a little overwhelmed because you could see it. I think you guys were in shock at first, like, oh my God. And, now, and my thing is you guys do your thing, but now on to the next, right? This is what we do here at the Elgin Police Department. We are continuously trying to be better, continuously challenging ourselves, continuously setting the bar high for one reason: to make sure that the community has the best police department, and they truly realize that we are people that care about, about solving cases and giving a sense of peace and closure, but also, not being afraid to do things differently. And I think the podcast and starting a cold case unit, because I heard the chatter when we first started the cold case unit. Oh, you're allocating resources to, why do we need to do this? And all that is great, right? When you have the critics, because it makes you think and it makes you push harder. But you have to believe in something, and you have to truly believe it at the core of why you're doing it. And then you get the right people in the right positions, and then you see what happens. So for me, the benefit is definitely something that I think we've displayed, and I think the bar is just set really high now, and it's our responsibility to meet that bar.
Yeah, no pressure at all for me. I'm beyond excited to be joining the cold case unit, working these cases with Andrew. And like Andrew and Matt in season 1, I have never done a podcast before, so I'm definitely in uncharted waters, but I'm, full steam ahead here. Chief, what gave you the idea to have us launch this podcast? Yeah,
I think it was just basically, thinking of something different and being one of the first. People are afraid to be the first of something because of the criticism. And so when you do something, you are going to open yourself up to criticism. And I love that. I think we thrive in that environment because I think, you really, truly, want to do something to get people involved. We could do the traditional things. We push things out on social media. We talk about it. Maybe there's a couple newspaper articles. But how do you involve people in today's world? And how do people hear their news? And what medium is it being delivered in? And how can you connect at that level? And I think that the podcast was just something. I'm not a huge podcast. I don't listen to podcasts. I mean, every now and then. So I wasn't a huge, but I love the technology part of police work as long as you do it in a smart way, right? Effective way. And so for me, it was something to, you have two detectives, you guys are, I'm a little bit older than you, but I'm not that much older, which I want to get that on the record here in this podcast, right? So it's not a foreign concept to me, but I think you get people who, and this is part of being in tune with what's happening in law enforcement, when you do have young police officers who are in their 20s, and this is how they grew up. This is how they get their information, right? Mm-hmm. Like some people don't actually read books. They read, whether it's a Kindle or on their iPad or, or they're listening to an audiobook. So it's like you have to, cater to those mediums to get more people involved. And when you do that and try to think of something, and again, I've said it, I don't think of the whole concept of, think outside the box. To me, there is no box, right? Mm-hmm. Like I love The Matrix. If you're a fan of The Matrix, and the scene with the spoon, right? There is no spoon, right? So and so for me, I love that. Like it's just, I'm a huge probably geek and nerd, and that's probably coming off like that, and I really don't care. But I think to me, it was just like, how can we do this differently? Still, keeping our roots and history of a police department and the traditional ways of policing, but how do we now evolve it? And we evolve it to get more people involved, and ultimately look at the reach that we had. So I think. And you guys were just the right guys to accept it. A little bit hesitant at first, yeah. But you guys got on board because you're smart. Even when I said, I was like, okay, you guys will be fine, right? Because I know that, it's unnerving for people to speak publicly. I think that was part of it, right? But for me, that's not unnerving. That's what I do as a police chief. So it was not, to me, I'm thinking, well, these guys, they should just do that too, right? So, and you guys knocked it out of the park. So I think it was a great, concept that, that I just placed the idea into your guys' head, and then you guys ran with it, and it did an amazing job.
Yeah, I think Matt and I said before that it was, we were a little apprehensive to do it and to step into this kind of space because we've never done that before. But once we kind of did, it was really the natural progression of, you put faces on milk cartons, you do billboards, you do newspaper articles, you do social media. Like this was the next progression in that kind of way to get information out to people, I think. And it really helped us highlight victims from cases, get the community involved. What are your thoughts on the nexus between our philosophy at the department as it relates to community engagement and then the podcast kind of, merging those two things together?
I think it's just the next evolution of, the philosophy of community engagement that the Elgin Police Department has had ever since I was a brand new officer. we have just, and I think people understand community engagement, but they don't, I think, really realize the value until something like this. And, when you have officers that you have to know your community in order to effectively police your community. It's as simple as that. The community does not owe the police department anything. It is always on us to extend our hand to the community and to be, empathetic, to listen to someone's different perspective, to truly want to change to make things better. And that's listening on both sides, the people who are your critics and the people who really, they love you no matter what you do. The balance is the middle. And so for me, community engagement has always been something that, every police chief that has come before me has done something to progress it. So it's my responsibility to ensure that when I do leave and the next police chief that steps into my place, that they're left with a department where the officers know their community, that they care about their community, that they're invested in coming. This is not a job. This is our profession. And so for me, community engagement, and then really when you get to know people in the community and you talk to them, even if they have some issue with the department, right? They're in that conversation, as long as they know that you're listening and you're truly genuine, that's a great way to change that narrative. So 5-10 years from now, you're having a whole generation of young adults, young kids that grew up knowing that the Elgin Police Department was listening, was open, and it changes the narrative of police work, which, it's all connected, right? Officers that come to work, they know their community values them, they feel a sense of purpose in their profession, they perform better, they feel better, then they go home and they have a better home life, right? All that works together. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to have critics or you're not going to have a hard day. Like I said, you got to ride the wave sometimes. It's hard sometimes, it's not easy, it's not fun. But eventually, if the core of what you believe is to make, and this is what I believe, is to make the department better and to make the community better, and underwriting all of that is the philosophy of the people that we serve, that we truly protect and serve. So the things that are on our police vehicles that said we protect and serve, right? Then these, when you raise your hand and you're going to get sworn in as an officer and you're going to uphold the Constitution and all this stuff, those words actually mean something. And I think that the officers that get that and get that early on in their career, they are very open-minded to continue to try different things to enhance our community engagement philosophy.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving forward, Chief, what are your long-term goals for this podcast, and how do you actually measure success of a podcast like this?
Yeah, so success, it's very difficult. Success, obviously, the outcome is we found, we solved the case. We found Karen. But I think if that outcome never happened, there's still a success story there. We did something different. We were able to find some answers. We were able to get the community involved. We were looking at a case that sat cold for 40 years. So I think the success is just the progress. Luck is not a strategy, right? It wasn't luck that we found her. There was a little bit of luck in terms of, where to go look. But what had led up to you guys deciding we're going to go to the Fox River and we're going to do that, that wasn't luck, right? Yeah. That was hard work, dedication, professionalism, your intelligence, your knowledge. Luck is never a strategy unless you're buying a lottery ticket, and then that is truly just luck. Mm-hmm. So, for me, I think the long-term goals for the podcast and the success is just to continue to evolve and continue to dedicate our time to be flexible in how we're, delivering this podcast and being responsive to when we're getting feedback from the community. I've been asked by a lot of people, can you guys do an episode once a week? And I remember telling you that, and you're like, oh, and you can't, right? Because it's just a lot. And so,
it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, but I'm going to deliver the message to you guys so you guys know, hey, this is kind of what the people are saying. But, being flexible and being responsive, and I think making sure that everyone that's involved, and this is the other thing too, when the history of the police department, you will see a lot of times people forget the history. Somebody started a program, somebody did this, and then as time goes on, people forget who were the pioneers who did that. So when we first launched this podcast, and I said, you and Matt will be the true pioneers in this, right? So 30 years from now when you're retired, hopefully not that long from now, but right, and now here comes Chris, right? So, we're still kind of in the infancy of this, and you guys will be the pioneers. You will be the people that the next generation of officers come in and they say, wow, look what those guys did. Now I'm inspired to do something. So, and it's always important that we record that history and remember that history, and then find the success in the outcomes, which may not necessarily be being a case being solved. But it's, a family that feels listened to. It's an officer that feels that they, there's truly a higher calling in this profession that they've now reached. And now it's the mentorship that you'll give young detectives. You're going to be leading Chris along on this next journey in the podcast. And, you're the pro now, right? And people are going to look at you like, and it's a lot of
something like that. Yeah.
Something like that, yes. But I think when you put that into the world, into the universe, you guys are going to absolutely just, you're going to do great. So I'm excited for this next season and what we do here.
Yeah, David Simon wrote a book called Homicide: Life on the Street, and then he did The Wire. People watch that show, but he had a bunch of different rules of homicide, and one was it's good to be good, it's better to be lucky.
Yes.
I think you kind of need a little bit of both, right? You need to be good and then also have some luck that kind of comes your way.
Yes.
And that's how I feel like our last season kind of went. Was we did a lot of work, but we also got lucky in a couple different things, and things just kind of came together in a perfect way. Yep. But doing season 1, Matt and I learned a lot about dealing with the media and coordinating with other agencies, coordinating with civilians, working with victims, families, all those different things. Are there any lessons that you can kind of give us from your, higher level perspective that we learned from the first season?
Yeah, I think to me it was it was a pleasure to be able to see young officers and detectives see the things that, I've been kind of saying and the command staff has been saying about working with our community and working with the media, because a lot of times in police work, especially, 4 or 5 years ago when the narrative of police work was not good. And it was very difficult for officers to keep that motivation. And so, and in that, I'm, as the police chief, you're dealing with the media, you're working with the media, you're working with the community, right? Having those harder conversations, sitting down with people who were very different, and sometimes being criticized because I was doing that. And so when I saw this kind of like aha moment where, hey, we can leverage these relationships and we can build these relationships, and we don't always have to agree with each other philosophically or whatever. But when I saw that and you see it actually happening, like where, you guys were like, we're going on this radio show, we're going on the news, a live show on the news. And I was like, go, right? I mean, I never went with you guys. There was no reason for me to go, right? Like, I'm not the police chief that wants to be front and center in this. You do your thing, right? I support you. I'm in the background, because for me, it was like to see you guys doing that and to, really embrace it. And now kind of, not that you didn't before, but I think when you're actually doing it and you see it while you're doing it, it's so different. And I think that set a standard for young officers, right? And for the department to see the media is not an enemy, right? Community people that think differently. And so that kind of perspective that, that you do have when you're at an administrative level, and sometimes it's hard to tell people, look, because they don't believe it, they don't experience it. So for me, it was just a huge, I was smiling a lot. I would just say that every time when I saw you guys on the news, I was smiling. I was like, and you guys were so great at it, right? And so sometimes I think that, the lesson there was never be afraid to do the things that you may be criticized for, or that you will be the outlier, right? When you're the outlier, it's not an easy place to be. But never be afraid, because 2-3 years from now, what's going to happen? And when you look back and you're like, I did that, right? And wow, like what a difference it made. So, and you got to be the first, right? You have to be the one that says, so now you guys are media pros. I mean,
it was definitely a crash course in media relations.
Yes.
From probably January, we did one interview, and then it skyrocketed from there. And it was just a really big crash course in figuring out how to navigate doing that. So.
And it's hard too, because you're on the spot, right? Like a lot of times too, for me.
Yeah, when you're live.
Yeah, when you're live and
you have to come up with an answer.
And for me, anytime that opportunity came, I'm not talking about something difficult, right? Like when you're in a position where you have to talk about an officer-involved shooting or police reform, or you're at the city council and you're getting the bombardment of questions, that to me is very different. And that's the stuff that, I do in my profession. So when I would have to sit and talk about the Colt, I'm like, I love this. Like we could do this all day, invite them, because it's just more, pleasurable than having to talk about some of the harder stuff. But I think it's a nervousness thing too, right? People are like, am I going to be criticized for what I say, how I speak, what I think? Because when you reveal what you truly think and believe, now people know and can criticize that, right?
Well, and
Which
they
is
don't
different.
they don't give you the questions they're going to ask you.
No.
It was basically like walk in, sit down. All right, we'll be with you in 3 minutes. In 3 minutes, they come over and it's boom, 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 boom. Here's your questions, and you kind of are like, okay, and then you're done.
Yes.
And you're kind of right off the, flying off the seat of your pants a little bit, just going, okay, I got to answer this question.
And you guys did great. You did absolutely great. And again, I think that goes back to just who you are as professionals. And, as we transition from, Matt leaving the unit, as he gets promoted now to a sergeant and he's on to this next phase in his career. And as Chris enters in, this cold case, it is something that, obviously as a police chief, you're running a whole entire organization, but this is like something that there's just a little extra something there that I'm like, this has to be done the right way because, and so inviting, having the right personality, right? You have to have a right personality that comes in. And Chris, I think you're going to be awesome. You're going to just, you're going to learn so much. You're going to be involved in so much. And I truly, you have a great mentor with Andrew because you got to have the right personality, right? If you're somebody that just is very standoffish, how are you going to connect with the family, right? If somebody, if you're constantly looking like you're mad because your face just, you never smile, people are like, I can't talk to this person, right? So that's part of the secret sauce, right? It's who you put in these positions and how then, how I can support you and let you guys do your thing, and really, again, I'm just really excited for this next season and for you to be in the unit.
Chief, all I can say is I appreciate that. Humble is an understatement. And again, I appreciate your words. The last thing that we wanted to ask you about was where do you see the Elgin Police Department's cold case unit 5 years from now?
Yeah, so as I would just say it's evolving. We're in the process of now getting you guys an office space. Right, we went from a room to now a dedicated space. So I think as we move forward, we're going to add another detective in this next few months. Hopefully, getting a sergeant into the unit now, and just the goal is to, when you think about it, what's the end game here? Not to have any cold cases.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. So. But that's not going to happen overnight. So 5 years from now, right, my hope is that unit has just absolutely exploded. We're training other agencies. We're sharing our knowledge. We're being, the ambassadors to our profession when it comes specifically to cold cases. And then we're solving cases, right? And number one thing, too, is just being able to have families that feel that they're seen, that they're heard, that they're seen. And that this is not, this is not a transactional relationship, right? A lot of things that we do in life, very transactional, right? You got to do this, I got to do this, on to the next. This is not that. This is something that, I'm sure, Andrew sometime has gone and you think about, I've heard some of your interviews and with you and Matt and just kind of you both reflect very deeply on how this impacted you in your life, right? And now it's your responsibility to do that for the next generation of law enforcement so that they have that feeling, and so I think that this unit is just going to get bigger and better, and I'm extremely excited for it. It's something that I love seeing it actually happen. And so I really want to thank you, Andrew and Matt, for the work that you do. WRMN, again, as I close out here, WRMN for the work that they do, the community, the Karen Sheeper's family, what a gracious family, unbelievable. And welcome, Chris, you into this crazy thing that you're about to go into. So, it's going to be exciting, and I look forward to seeing you on the news and your first interview. And you're going to knock it out of the park. So thank you guys for having me, and on to the next.
Yeah, thank you for coming on with us, Chief. We appreciate you taking your time to come over with us again. I think without you pushing Matt and me and now Chris to do this podcast, the podcast obviously wouldn't exist. We wouldn't have a cold case unit. We wouldn't have Karen's case closed. We'd just still be working our cases, and they'd be sitting on a shelf somewhere. So it really is making a difference. I'm excited to see where we continue to take it as we kind of try to expand here. So
absolutely my pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you, Chief. And now that we've reflected on Season 1, Where's Karen, and talked about the future of the podcast and this unit as a whole, I think it's now time to talk a little bit about what we have in store for Season 2.
One big lesson we learned from Season 1 was that recording a podcast and preparing a case takes a lot of time. Plus, Chris and I are actively working several cold case homicides that are not appropriate for a podcast at this point. With the changes that we're experiencing in the unit and the extensive work we're doing on those active cases, we're going to make a slight deviation for Season 2.
Yeah, while we're hoping to return to more serialized format and a future season with another case, in the interim, we want to make sure that we keep our cold case victims' memories alive. So as we sit down and prepare for Season 2, we discussed a lot about a case from 1976, which oddly enough had links to Karen's disappearance, and we came up with this idea.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about a 1976 disappearance of a girl named Barbara Gluckert, kind of behind the scenes when we were doing Season 1. The prime suspect in her disappearance, Thomas Erlacher, actually lived in Karen's apartment just before she moved in. And one of our theories from Season 1 was that something could have happened to Karen at her apartment. We now know that that is not the case, but it got Chris and I kind of thinking that we could shine a light on some of these older cases in our case file and keep those cases alive, bring those victims kind of back to life in our media, and also seek some tips from our old cases as we continue to work on other cases and select another more serialized season, hopefully in the future.
Our listeners will remember that we currently have 41 homicides dating back all the way to 1971. So we thought that in the spirit of memorializing all of our victims, we would start at the beginning by discussing and remembering our victims from our 1970s cases.
We're calling Season 2 Elgin, the 1970s. And in this season, Chris and I will dive back into our cold case files for the Elgin Police Department, and we will release information for 5 homicides that occurred here in Elgin between 1970 and 1979. And we will also discuss Barbara Gluckert's case from 1976, because it has a lot of ties to Elgin, and because Matt and I met with a detective for that case when we were working on Season 1. Hopefully we can use this platform to explore other cases, remember the victims, and seek new information for their cases.
So, please join us for Season 2, which launches on Monday, August 11th, 2025. Our hope is that as we look at these cold case homicides, people will remember the victims in these cases. While they are gone, they are certainly not forgotten by their families and friends, or by us. We want to make sure that people in our community hear their stories and remember them too, because we know that in all of our cases, somebody knows something.
If you or anyone you know has information about this case or any other cold case in Elgin, please contact the Elgin Police Department cold case email at coldcasetips@elginil.gov or the cold case tip line at 847-289-COLD. You can also review cold case information on the Elgin Police Department's Transparency Hub by going to elginil.gov and navigating to the Elgin Police Department's Transparency Hub, where every cold case homicide and missing persons case is listed with photographs and information about each case.